Welcome to the Global Discussion, a discussion with creatives, leaders, and thinkers. My name is Simon Hodgkins. I'm your host here at the Global Discussion. Today, I'm joined by Iza Dabek. Iza, you're very welcome to the show. Before I hit you with some questions, because we've got a lot to talk about, maybe take a moment, introduce yourself, and tell us a little bit about your world. So you're very welcome, Iza.
All right. So thank you so much, Simon, for hosting me, for having me on your show. Like you said, my name is Iza Dabek. That's a very good pronunciation. And I work in the field of hypnosis, subconscious reprogramming. I help founders, creatives, leaders, professionals overcome any form of self-sabotage. And, even it can be even to gain confidence, to gain clarity, to stop procrastinating so that they can actually fast track their goals. Yeah, and lead a happier life, right? That's all.
Well,
That's what
that
I mean.
sounds wonderful. We're all interested in leading a happier life. Now,
Mm.
I've got some questions that I want you to really give us some thoughtful answers on. So, I want to talk about the words self-sabotage or
Mhm.
self-sabotaging. You often describe this self-sabotage not as a failure of maybe somebody's willpower, but as a deeper fear of owning success. And that really interests me. So could
Mm.
you expand on that to kick us off? How the subconscious mind creates these internal roadblocks, for high achievers or people trying to grow?
Yeah, sure. That is such a big question, actually, and a very important one. So let me try to break it down so it actually makes more clear sense. So first, let's maybe talk about what self-sabotage really is. It can be so many things, right? And it can be very hidden as well. It's not only procrastination or lack of discipline, for example, because it can show up as perfectionism, people pleasing, even weak boundaries, overgiving, maybe overworking, and neglecting rest and health. And all of these type of behaviors, they pull us away from what we consciously want, right? We have these desires, these wants, and it could even be finishing a project, launching a project, growing a business, creating impact, and even wealth. So the question really is like, why do we do this, right? Why is it that we want something so much and yet we hold back? We delay, we stall, we sabotage the very goals that we are actually working towards. Because you see, at the core, self-sabotage is not really a willpower issue. It's really about self-protection. So what happens is, we have the conscious mind and the subconscious mind, and the subconscious mind is actually doing exactly what it's wired to do, which is to keep us safe. But the thing about being safe and secure is it doesn't always equal success or happiness. It just means familiar. So the subconscious mind is going to keep us stuck in that familiar feeling and thought pattern. Okay. And, many people that I work with, they carry like very deep beliefs. For example, if I'm successful, I'll be judged. So even becoming successful can feel threatening. Or being visible is dangerous. If I rest, I'm lazy. Or even there is a lot of blocks around worthiness. Like I'm not worthy of happiness, success, or financial freedom. And what happens is we have all these beliefs in the subconscious mind that were actually formed in childhood through family dynamics, through school, early authority figures. And this happened especially in the first 7 years of our life when our subconscious mind was really open and we were absorbing everything without filtering it. Okay. So right now, what can happen is like even though we want something on a conscious level, maybe get to a different stage in our finances, or like I said, just to reach those goals, the subconscious might still believe that we are stuck in that kind of mentality of that child with those fears and wounds. Okay. So for the nervous system, it's not actually safe. And one of the most common fears I see, apart from the fear of failure, which is very common, fear of rejection, but it's also fear of success. Because these questions, they start to creep up like, am I good enough to be on that level? What if I build something amazing and then I lose everything? Or what if I reach that level and I won't be able to maintain it? So it really triggers these protective behaviors like avoiding, over controlling, stalling, losing momentum, not having motivation. Okay. And this is the work that I do actually, is to update that internal system, the beliefs, the identity, the emotional safety, so that success doesn't feel like a threat anymore.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry to hit you with such a complex question at the start, because it covers a lot of different areas, and you've
Yeah,
answered that
exactly.
really well, and you've given us a good understanding of
Mhm.
self-sabotage, but also some of the drivers and the levers that maybe are holding us back a little bit. And
Mhm.
I wanted to ask you, sort of related to that, because I did read that in maybe a recent post that you put up, you were sort of stating that confidence isn't really the only thing, that's stopping us from achieving or hitting these milestones.
Yeah.
But it's really back to what you were just saying, that the nervous system, and training the nervous system to sort of hold success for us. So, are there any practices or tools or ways that can help people, with that internal capacity to, I suppose I'm saying, to really own their success? Because it is a bit of a roadblock for some people,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Definitely. This is so true, and while taking action and actually hitting those goals can really boost our confidence. Like, this is true on the one hand, but on the other hand, it's not the whole story, because, real confidence doesn't really come from those achievements alone, right? It's really about, how safe and secure we feel when we start to expand, when we start to become visible, when we start to rise up into those confidence levels. And I can tell you that I've worked, with leaders and CEOs, professionals who have hit really big milestones, and yet they still doubted themselves. They often felt like imposters, or like they couldn't really enjoy that success because they haven't made that internal shift that actually allows the nervous system to be on that level, if that makes sense. So, sometimes what can happen is we can appear confident on the outside. We can be on a very high position as a leader, but sometimes it's almost like pretending, like it's playing this game of being confident while actually inside feeling really anxious and unworthy. So, like, achievements matter, of course, it's wonderful to achieve, but if your nervous system is still wired for stress, for lack, for hustle, like I said, you can start to sabotage your own success and momentum. And so this is why, this kind of work needs to go beyond affirmations and visualization. It's really to get to the root cause of why this is happening, and then help people retrain their nervous system to actually feel safe, to feel safe with ease, with visibility, even with not doing anything and resting and being still, right? And like you asked for some tools, oh my gosh, there's so many tools that one can use, even breath work. There's like so many amazing breath work practices that can lower down the stress levels as well. Somatic work, working with the body, meditation, emotional freedom techniques, and of course, really powerful visualizations. And I use all of them in my work, but I can tell you that the biggest transformation happens when you work directly with the subconscious mind, when you reach those programs, okay, those belief systems that we all carry, and those stuck emotions, because it's like we start to expand the window of our capacity, our ability to hold more, to or even to be fulfilled, like, because at the end of the day we want to also feel good. We want to experience the joy of life, right, without actually collapsing and shutting down. And I like to use this comparison. If you have a toothache, for example, you have a tooth infection, let's put it this way, and you go to the dentist, and the dentist just, checks you and gives you antibiotics, maybe changes the filling, right? For a while, you actually feel better, but then the problem comes back again. And it's the same with inner work. If you only continuously work on the surface level, the same pattern will keep on coming back. Okay.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I was particularly interested in what you said about
Mm.
it's not just people who are struggling with this, but it's fascinating to me that even some of the people at the very top of their career, the very height of their success, still have this nagging doubt that maybe I'll get found out, maybe
Mm,
that was luck. You know, that there's still that, as you say, that disconnect that's there, that's holding people back from accepting that. And you also comment, I know, when you speak to people, sometimes you say things like, look, you're not lazy, you
mm,
don't lack discipline. And you've mentioned a couple of times as we've been speaking already that it's okay to take a break, for example, but some people feel guilty about that. And
mm,
you know, is it that people are running on an outdated then subconscious system, you know, wired by these outdated beliefs that they have, or maybe that have been internalized from an early age, you know, that pressure, that
mm,
unprocessed maybe experience, if I can put it that way. What are your thoughts
mm.
on that, Isa?
First, I want to tell you that I have never met myself anybody who's actually lazy, and I'm talking about the people that I've worked with, all the people that actually show up at my sessions. Sometimes they claim that, oh, I've been so lazy, or I am lazy because I'm not doing anything. These people are, nothing but lazy. Okay, founders, executives, high performers, even amazing stay-at-home moms. Like I said, they're not lazy. What I often find is that they are exhausted on some level. Okay. And it's not because that they are, like I said, that there is something wrong with them, because like sometimes we go back to that default mode, there's something wrong with me, but it's actually because they are running on specific programs. And this one would be what I call the survival program. And the survival program says you have to earn your worth, right? Unless I'm grinding, struggling, proving myself, unless there is some sort of suffering involved and pain, it's almost like I'm not worthy of that success. Okay. And like you said very well, that this comes from the early programming and the early experiences. And I've also noticed that many times it's almost like we seek that validation that we never got from a parent, especially from a father, right? Those words of encouragement, I'm proud of you. And it's almost like throughout life, we are constantly chasing that approval and validation. And I've worked with this like CEO. I can give you an example who was really blocked around his success, and he couldn't seem to really move his business forward. And during the session, we actually uncovered a memory from when he was 7 years old, and he had spent months building like a small mod, like those planes that kids build, right? Like you have a kit and you assemble the pieces, and then he was so proud, so excited of it. And he was going to present it at school at one of those like show and tell events. And his dad was there as well watching. So he starts to launch this plane, and the plane crashes. And everybody laughs, like all the kids are laughing. And then he looks at his father, and his father gave him this look of disappointment. And at that moment, that small child created a belief like, no matter how hard I work, I will still fail. So you can imagine that we created these beliefs when we were very small and we didn't really understand what things mean. Okay. And of course, that belief followed him into adulthood. He actually built a really successful business early in his career, and then he lost it. He literally sabotaged it. So, those old kind of stories from our childhood can reactivate at specific moments in our life. And this is why you also said there can be somebody who is like in a really high position, who's really successful, has achieved so much. And then all of a sudden, those programs, they start to become really active and they switch on. And what I've also noticed, very often people say the past is in the past. I don't want to look there. Let's just move on. Let's focus on the present moment. Let's build the future. But you see, it doesn't really work like that, because the past is never really gone in some ways. There are still memories, and those memories, they have emotions attached to them and then beliefs. So it's really important to actually go back and process those memories to understand what is the truth. What is the real truth? Am I really not worthy because of that situation? Am I really not enough? And when people have that experience in the hypnosis, when they understand, wow, it wasn't my fault and I've been carrying this guilt all my life, it dissolves that program. Honestly, I have seen incredible things happening in the sessions with my clients. So yeah, I'm really
Yeah.
passionate about this work as
I,
well.
I like I like the words. It dissolves that program. It dissolves that sort of thought pattern that you had. That's really
Yeah.
good. Now, I want to ask you. Thank you for sharing the insights and the tips that you've already shared with us. But one of the things that I wanted to ask you was around things like hypnosis. Now, to some people, they can be quite skeptical about this, but I know that you fuse sort of
Mm.
neuroscience with hypnosis, and you sort of fast track goals for people. But do you find that people are a little bit worried, a little bit skeptical? And how does that process work in reality when you're actually
Mm.
meeting with somebody on a one-to-one basis, Isa?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So yes, absolutely. Some people are very skeptical about hypnosis, and it's understandable because, there is a lot of like misunderstandings around what hypnosis actually is. And for many years, it has been portrayed like, in movies as being manipulative, like some kind of mind control, like I'm gonna, put somebody in hypnosis and they're gonna write me a check for like $1 million. But that's absolutely not true because what you see on TV is done for entertainment purposes. So that couldn't be further from the truth, actually, because, hypnosis is, like a therapy. Okay. So it's a state of deep relaxation, a focused attention. Okay. So the subconscious mind actually becomes more open and receptive to change. So you're not actually asleep. You are in total control of what you say. You are fully aware as well. And in my sessions, we're actually having a discussion. We're actually talking the entire time. So we are engaging. I'm asking questions and I'm like a guide. And then it's up to you whether you answer them. But it's really about understanding the truth. So you can see it like we are like detectives in the mind, trying to understand, right? What is the truth? And hypnosis is incredible because it's like a tool that allows us to actually access the subconscious mind. And that is the part where all the habits are, where the emotional patterns and those limiting beliefs are stored. So, what is actually happening? I just want to say this during hypnosis, so that people understand what it really is. It just means that you are going into a specific brainwave state. Usually it's alpha or theta or somewhere in between. And these are actually the brain waves that you go into when you are just about to go to sleep or you are in that deep meditation. So when you are in those brain waves, what actually happens is you are more open to change, like your mind is more open to change and to suggestibility. Your imagination is heightened, creativity. And so it's actually much easier to change those belief systems and replace them with more supporting ones, right? And in fact, when you look at children, they spend most of their time in those brain waves, especially in those early years, which is why they learn so quickly. They just absorb everything without filtering. And we also go into hypnotic states every day. When you're watching TV, you go into a hypnotic state. That's why the TV is, great for those advertisements because everything just goes in, right? We're so relaxed, we're on the sofa. And you might also get into a hypnotic state when you're daydreaming, when you're driving the car. Like sometimes you just like switch off and then you wonder, how did I get to this place? I've just almost like not been here for 5 minutes. So, we could be doing it without any intention, unconsciously, or you can actually choose. How amazing it is that you can actually choose to be hypnotized and choose intentionally what kind of change you want to create in your life.
I really
Yeah.
like that. I really like that. And thanks for
Mhm.
bringing that to life for us. Because whether you're sitting on the couch watching the next Netflix series, or so, a lot of people I think have had that where they're on autopilot driving the car. And great
Mhm.
as well to reference sort of early childhood where you're just so receptive to those
Yeah.
different sort of states. So thank you for sharing that. Something else I want to squeeze in, and I don't want to miss this, is the words emotional energetics, because when I come across this
Mhm.
I thought that's interesting. Now I think it well, maybe you explain how it blends energy work and this
Mhm.
emotional
Yeah.
regulation, because I think most people, I think I'm right in saying I've not come across the term emotional energetics before.
Mhm. Yeah. So this term is actually the title of one of my group trainings that I created to help people build emotional stability, resilience, learn how to regulate emotions and actually manage them on a daily basis. But it's, we can also use this term because actually the word emotion literally means energy in motion, emotion, right? So when we start to work on letting those emotions out, especially those that have been suppressed for years, because, nobody ever taught us really how to deal with emotions. So, you could have started crying and then cut off. So where does that energy go, right? Very often we push it down. And we also push emotions down with addictions. Okay. So it can be anything from drinking, smoking, scrolling on social media, anything to kind of numb out as well. And that's why when you start to work with emotional energetics, I really love that term now, it actually makes you feel lighter, clearer, and even have more energy during the day. Okay, because a lot of these suppressed emotions are quite heavy. Okay, we can talk about guilt, shame, fears, powerlessness. And yeah, so it's really, really important to actually work on emotions, because when they start building up in the system and, when they have been accumulating for so many years, they can even cause physical issues, muscle tension, headaches, fatigue, even chronic illnesses, because emotions also they don't just live in the mind, they live in the body. And you can imagine they're like clusters of stuck energy that the body is holding on to. So very often what happens is people try to think their way out of emotional patterns, but the way out is to actually feel them, to experience them, and to process them accordingly, and almost like move them out through the body. So yeah, this is where that energy work comes in. It's nothing scary. It's not woo-woo, okay? At the end of the day, everything is energy, right? A thought is energy as well. And many high achievers, high performers have been conditioned to actually not feel, to cut off from feeling, because they've been told that, being emotional is like a distraction, is like a weakness. Because to lead and to perform, you have to be always in control and composed. But, those suppressed emotions, they don't go away. This is what I'm saying, is they really get stored in and they later show up as anxiety, overthinking, because what they actually want, they want to be set free. They want to be seen and acknowledged. This is the kind of work that I do as well during my programs.
That's great. So, look, let's get practical for a minute then, Isa. So, whether you're an executive high flying of a big global company or not, you're doing something else in your life that is equally as fulfilling. Are there some tools or mindset shifts that a person could just start using today to start interrupting some of these patterns and these self-sabotaging sort of cycles and beliefs? If you were to meet somebody and they said, look, just give me, what are 2 or 3 things I could start today just to help, what would you say to that, Isa?
The first thing that I advise doing is start getting curious instead of self-critical. So start actually asking yourself different questions. Like, first notice the behavior that you are stuck in. Okay, so let's say it's procrastination. And then ask yourself this question, like, what is the hidden payoff of being stuck in this pattern? Because, the thing about this is not random. There is like a reason why we are stuck in this behavior. And very often, like I said, it's because there is like a self-protection mechanism. So in some ways, being stuck in procrastination is actually helping us. Okay. And it might be keeping you safe. It might be keeping you small on purpose so that when you go out, you don't risk being hurt, being in pain or humiliating yourself, right? Or failing. And this is why also, we stay kind of invisible. Very often we kind of like, don't really want to show up on social media because there is this threat, right, of being attacked in some way. And next, I also recommend becoming aware of, when you start to get caught in those self-protective loops. And one simple but like really powerful tool that I teach to start interrupting this pattern is through breath and awareness. So When you find, that urge suddenly to procrastinate, to delay, to distract yourself, ask yourself this question: what part of me is afraid to succeed right now? This is like the one question to ask. What do I believe will happen if this actually works? So let's say I get that goal, right? Let's say I finish that project and I launch it. What am I actually really afraid of? And then see if you can link it with an emotion. So what is the emotion that is attached to this story? Is it shame? Is it guilt? Is it fear? Is it something else that you're feeling? It could be a type of fear, like the fear of disappointment, the fear of loss as well. So yeah, this is also very powerful. And then, you take that, you can use breathwork practice. Okay. So you get out of your head and into your body where you can actually process that story. And, really powerful tools also include visualization techniques. So then you kind of start to visualize the beneficial, like the positive outcome that you want in your life, and you link it with an emotion. Okay, what is it? Is it joy? Is it fulfillment? Is it peace? Like feeling, blissful, that feeling of freedom. So, or even excitement. So you kind of link, when you start doing visualization work, it's really important to link it with the emotion. Yeah, I mean, there are so many things you could do. Of course, meditation as well. But what I find is when somebody is in that survival kind of mode, fight or flight, and they have a really hard time to stop, the kind of thinking loops. It's not easy to meditate. It's not easy to sit still and just like that, quieten down your mind. So before actually, if you are in this kind of state where you cannot really seem to manage your thoughts, what I would recommend doing first is working with the body. Okay, like we said, breathwork practices, somatic work, doing something first to kind of like calm down the body, and you will see that then it will actually be easier to meditate.
Yeah, well, thank you. That's a wealth of practical advice there. So thank you, Isa. And it brings me nicely on to the next point that I want to touch base with, which is you've talked about, the various people that you work with and, executives, etc. But
Mhm.
how do you track progress? Because I know executives love to track progress. So how do you track the progress and the outcomes of your work
Mhm.
with people? Is it through maybe goal attainment changes in emotional resilience? Is it feedback? Is it data? Is it all of that and more? So what does success look like for
Mhm.
somebody in your program, and how do you track that progress and measure that outcome?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It really depends what is success for that person, right? And so that's the first thing. When I start working with somebody, they actually tell me what they want to achieve. Okay, so I give them a whole host of questions that they answer, and then there is this one question where they describe their life without the actual issue that they are working on. So what I do as well is I help them, I create for them a specific self-hypnotic audio that they listen to for at least 33 days to wire in those new beliefs and kind of visions for the future. But in answering your questions maybe more fully, so what I've noticed is that there are three types of changes in this type of work. We can call them immediate shifts, cumulative results, and retroactive shifts. So I've noticed this varies really among clients. Like I've had people who had immediate shifts, really incredible. They experienced something and the changes were just, within the first few weeks, okay? Even sometimes even after the first session. And people often say, "Oh my God, I feel so much lighter now, and I understand now." I've had a woman overcome chronic fatigue that she's had for over 10 years, and it was, really, really causing her a lot of problems, a lot of pain, a lot of struggle. And, it was incredible because we had, I think we had 3 sessions, and we got to that one specific memory that started, a whole host of other beliefs and about who she is. And she understood something, that it wasn't actually her fault, because I mean, it's I don't want to bring this up now, but yeah, it was really incredible. And she started to lose weight because, you know, she gained about 12 kilos during her time with the chronic fatigue. She couldn't, you know, she didn't really exercise, she didn't move much, and she literally started losing weight progressively over 2 months without dieting, without anything. And she literally started hiking, and she sends me photos that she's horse riding. So, you know, these kind of shifts happen. Cumulative results, for example, the transformation happens gradually. And this one can be like, yeah, over also 2 or 3 months, for example. And then you start to notice you're setting better boundaries. You start behaving differently. Maybe you're more kind of calmer, in control. You feel more confident, right? You start to become more visible. Your business is growing. Like I've had people grow their business by 30%. Okay, scale. Like I once worked with a freelancer. She was on 1K. She couldn't, like, she was so stuck. Within like 2 months, she got into 10K per month. Okay, and then we have the results, which are like retroactive. So sometimes the client doesn't even realize the full extent of the transformation, and then they will look back and be like, oh my goodness, you know, wow, now I'm acting different in this like situation where normally I would have like spiraled, or I would have, you know, reacted with emotions. Okay. Or like people come back to me, like I've just had someone come back to me after 1 year, and he's like, you know what, since we worked together, it's just been like progressing, like things have been appearing in my life, opportunities. I've literally discovered something that I really love doing. So yeah, it's just
Yeah,
wonderful.
great,
So the
great
gym,
examples, great real world life examples,
yeah.
Isa. And thank you for explaining how you sort of track that. And it seems to be quite personal to the individual. Sometimes it's
Mm,
going to take a while. It's a journey. It's not a quick fix, I think. And great that you can see people going from that state of chronic fatigue to whether
yeah.
it's horse riding or hiking or whatever, and finding new outlets in their life, and those new beliefs may be starting to kick in. And I want to ask you about the high achieving founders and executives and the various different clients, because I know there's clients have different backgrounds, but do you then have to really tailor your methods to different roles and people and the context of their situation? So whether they're a solo entrepreneur or a big shot executive, um, do you have to
Mhm.
tailor that for people, for teams? How does that work?
Absolutely. That is completely true, you know, because the kind of role can differ, right? I could be working with a founder, I could be working with a team member, but, you know, I can tell you that what the people are going through internally are very similar. It doesn't really matter, you know, what kind of work you do or whether you're even working. At the end of the day, we have very similar issues. It just comes down to, you know, like it's almost like these patterns wear different masks depending on the person's context. So, for example, you could have somebody struggling with visibility, showing up online or fully owning their expertise. But at the same time, you could have, you know, somebody like an executive who's facing challenges around delegation or setting boundaries as a leader. And when I, you know, take them back in the hypnosis, the roots are very similar. It's just a different expression, right, of the same challenge. And that is why my work is really tailored towards the individual. So the process that I take people through can be adaptable, is adapted. And so I really customize these programs. And, you know, I'm a guide, right? So at the end of the day, it's really up to that person how far they take it, right? How much, you know, how committed they are, and, you know, how far they want to go with this process. Yeah, so yeah, this is and actually I really want to tell you about this one person that I worked with, because this really just came up for me in my mind. And he actually had a really thriving business before Brexit. So before Brexit, he had this cosmetic business, and he won so many awards for Entrepreneur of the Year. Like his business was really, really doing well. And then Brexit happens. I don't know, maybe somebody who's not from the UK is not familiar, but it's when the UK became independent from the European Union, and then all these laws came in and extra fees, and he couldn't really maintain that business, and it just had to be closed down. So he got depressed, and at the same time he also lost his fiance. Well, no, she was still alive, but his fiance didn't want to be with him anymore. I don't know, he was really left kind of alone. He had a sick mother, and so he was living off property rent. So he had two properties, and it was like 2 years, and then he kind of found me through an advertisement that I was posting on LinkedIn, and he joined one of my master classes. He started working with me, and this is incredible because he actually wrote to me what he wanted, and he said, look, I just want a work, I just want to find a job with this kind of people. This is how I want to feel at this job. And he literally found a job, which he told me when he was reading back what he wrote is almost 80% of what he wanted.
Thank you for sharing those great insights, Iza. Before we wrap up, I've got one more question for you. If you could leave our audience, people watching or listening to this discussion, with a powerful takeaway, what would that be?
Don't believe everything you think. Learn to question your thoughts. Okay. And remember, whatever you're going through right now, you're not stuck with this forever, because you can actually shift your current reality, but it really starts with that decision to actually want to shift it. Okay. And remember that it's not a weakness to get support. It doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you or that you're broken. It actually means that you're brave enough to want more for yourself. Okay. It's a sign that you are ready to evolve and that you've actually outgrown the older version of yourself. So it's not a weakness, it's growth.
Love it. Absolutely love it, Iza. And thank you. That brings us, unfortunately, to the end of our discussion today here on the Global Discussion. I want to thank everybody who's watching or listening to us around the world. We certainly appreciate it. Make sure that you like, follow, subscribe to the show. Do everything I need you to do to help give us a little bit of support. And of course, go and check out all the wonderful work that Iza Dabek is doing. It really is great work. And look, I hope you'll join me back here for some more conversations with creatives and leaders and thinkers just like Iza. But Iza, thank you so much for being on the show. It's been great to talk to you today.
Thank you so much, Simon. It's been awesome. And I just want to invite anybody who's listening. On the 5th of August, I'm doing an event called the Inner Leader Activator. And it's really a great event where I'm going to uncover the real reasons, also why we self-sabotage. So we're going to go deeper into that. And I'm going to do a live group session.
And look, before we cut, thank you for saying that. And before we cut off, if people want to connect with you, is it LinkedIn or your website or both? Where do you want people to go to?
LinkedIn is wonderful. Yeah. Iza Dabek. They can send me a message or a connection request. They can also find me on my website, healinghabitscoach.com. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for being on the show, Iza. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you so much. Thank you.